Let's talk a little bit more about how that impeachment process could impact the markets and your portfolio. Joining us for that is Ed Campbell. He is Senior Portfolio Manager at QMA. Also, Chris Retzler, who's Portfolio Manager at Needham Growth Fund. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Steve just talked a little bit about how the markets at this point, if they don't see anything new, any changes to what's happened, it's business as usual. How concerned are you about what's happened? What would be the potential for changing things? What do you think, Ed?
Not concerned at all. I mean, I think it's kind of a non-event, right? Because there's virtually zero chance that the president is removed. And I don't think that's going to change, so I don't see it as a market factor at all.
How about you, Chris?
Look, I think once we can get past this, we can start talking about the economy and start talking about companies again and get that headline off. And so I really don't think it's impactful for companies that we're meeting with. It's not how they're investing and making decisions for next year. I think it's much more about trade. I mean, when does this phase one really come in? What's the impact?
Is it for real?
Those are the more important pieces.
On the impeachment piece, I agree, non-factor at this moment. The question, and I'm not even sure that it's going to be a factor per se in terms of, I don't think he's leaving office. But the question is whether you think this helps or hurts his chances in 2020, which I think will have actually a very big impact potentially on the markets. You have a take on that?
Look, I don't think we know yet, but yes, I think you're right on. I also think, does it change Congress? I mean, does this get such a wave of excitement for Republicans going into next year that they take back the House? So we're going to see.
Do you think that you see this, though? It's not only that you see it as being not bad for the president, you see this as a net positive because you think this stirs the base, not only helps the president, but helps his supporters and helps other Republican candidates.
I think the American people are very smart and they can see through a lot of this charade that's been going on.
Yeah, I think it's the same type of thing. When you see Steny Hoyer talk about how they didn't hope for this, this was something that they started planning on inaugural day. So this is something where there was a push. I think it rallies the base.
I'm not sure they were planning on this version.
No, they would have taken any version they could get.
I don't think
Nancy
Pelosi would have. I think the left wing of the Democratic Party has absolutely wanted this from day one. I think Nancy Pelosi has been around long enough that she didn't want this to happen.
Well, she was pushed into it. I believe that, but she couldn't control the House to push back against it. So it depended on which narration fit. But the end goal was to impeach 45. They had hats. They had paraphernalia on this. They were selling hats and selling shirts on this. This was the end goal, and this rallies the base.
You know, a little weird. Elon pointed out that they are not sending the articles of impeachment just yet, that they're waiting to see what happens. I think they're trying to get some form of negotiation in terms of how this will be dealt with in the Senate. Does that drag this on longer?
Yeah,
does that have any
I think that's the key, and I'll direct this to you. Do you think this forces the narrative to be the do-nothing Dems?
Right.
Does it force them to do something now going forward?
Well, I think to Andrew's point, to the degree that this does impact election prospects, it will be market relevant. But I don't think we know how that's going to play out.
See, I'm just talking about policy now.
I'm not sure. I think it cuts both ways, by the way. I do.
It has to. Everything does it. Just where's the tipping point?
But I'm not. To me, it's not clear where the tipping point is just yet. I can make the argument that you just made about stirring the base of the Republicans. I also could make the argument that potentially, depending on how it gets dripped out and how the marketing of this takes place, that it could be very helpful to Democrats.
The Democrats that believe in what they believe in aren't going to move. There's only the incremental, and the Republicans. There's only an incremental amount of voters that are going to be swayed by this.
And so the people in the middle, the question is whether the people in the middle who are sort of on the fringe, on the edge, look at this and hear enough good things or bad things as a function of it to decide I'm going to go with. And then, of course, it is very dependent on who ultimately the Democratic nominee is.
And that's why they went for impeachment, because they didn't feel strong enough about any of the field of candidates, and they had to go with this.
I'm not sure I'll agree with that analysis completely. I think that there were.
You think Elizabeth Warren's a strong candidate? You think Joe Biden at his age is a strong candidate?
There are not
prone to gaffes.
I'm not going to dismiss. I completely agree with you that the Democratic Party does not have a clear, strong candidate. That I agree with. Having said that,
right.
I think that there's a question mark about why they did this. I think there's a lot of people in that party who did this not for the reason, not because they believed they didn't have a strong enough candidate.
I believe they just wanted to get rid of Donald Trump, and they want to win the next election.
I believe that's also true.
But I think what we're looking at as investors is, are we going to have more pro-business policies because of this? Is there going to be a continuation of deregulation?
You mean after the election? I mean, you're talking about probably nothing getting done between now and the election,
Correct,
I would
but
say.
if the probability of 4 more years of pro-business policies, deregulation that's been very beneficial to investment, we would love to see more investment come in. And right now, I think that we've been going through that downturn where there hasn't been enough
CapEx
investment.
spending, yeah.
Exactly.
We've all been waiting for that to happen. Now, there are a couple of things that have been happening. A lot of uncertainty out there, and some executives who come in here point to the trade talks and to the idea that we are going through this battle with China. Maybe we're at a détente now. We don't know how long that lasts, but there are plenty of CEOs who have said that's the reason they're not investing.
I think China's been a huge part of where are you going to deploy capital. These are long-term decisions. Is it going to be in Thailand, Vietnam? Are we going to continue in China? I mean, if you look at certain sectors, retail, they still are in China, but other higher tech companies where they're assembling, those are moving out to avoid tariffs. And the companies we're talking to, they're evaluating it. It's just the decisions they need to make, but they need a little bit more clarity.